So our last race weekend of the 2025 season didn't exactly end the way we wanted it to here at BMR Racing. We got a lot of ball joint failures that were all started from a little bit of an off-track adventure, but we're just going to run you through some of the damage we now have for the off-season to repair, and they'll kind of outline kind of the future of our videos moving forward. So you can kind of see already when we lost this side of the ball joint fender, just got blown way out when the wheel came off. So you can see it's all been pushed out from the body, so all of this is going to have to be fixed or most likely just replaced. And then underneath here, pretty sure some of this evidence here, we hit our sway bar pretty darn hard, and that probably needs to be replaced as well. It's banged up some of this stuff here, let alone the control arm. And when we come underneath, it really boogered up the rear control arm area, as we lost this ball joint up here. And you can see when you move this wheel, that rear end is just all over the place for that control arm. So this guy's gonna have to be replaced. We're gonna replace control arms, new ball joints, sway bar. And then this kind of, as we roll across, comes to the big damage that happened. So essentially what ended up occurring is, as one of our drivers went off track, he clipped a curb, and the curb grabbed onto our mount point here. And this is our jack point, so this is where we lift up the front of the car. And it pushed in, which then pushed this guy, which then bananaed our rad, which I don't know how it kept water, but this area here, that's supposed to be flush against this face here. So all of that's going to kind of have to be taken apart and re-put together. We lost our brake ducting, that's just gone. Yeah, so that was kind of the big thing. And when this happened, it jarred everything so much that it created the fractures in our ball joints and started the failures. So we ended up losing this ball joint on the Sunday, which our driver ended up going into the weeds for. And then when we go over to the driver's side, we actually lost the outer ball joint, which tended to make a little bit less damage, but we lost that on the Saturday, and it actually maintained the rear portion here, stayed together, but we'll replace that as well. So yeah, it's a pretty big damage hit up front here. We can take a look at the other side. So you can see this fender didn't quite get hit and pushed out nearly as much as the passenger side when it popped through, but it did push all this back into the bodywork, so we're gonna have to take all of this off and have that a good look over. It did rip out all of our fender liner and pulled out a couple electronic stuff that we're gonna have to figure out and sort out again, but that's kind of all part of it. But that's kind of the extent of the major damage that we ran into. Was lower control arms, these sway bars. Under the hood we're pretty much still fine. All of this is fine, we didn't have any issues there. The engine is still strong. Rear end side, we didn't really see anything. Normally we have most of our problems in the rear end, but everything seemed okay after the last race weekend. We will be creating some upgrades back here, just to try to fix some of the suspension problems and geometry stuff going on, replace some of the worn out stuff. But overall, the back end, kind of everything stayed together just as it needed to. One of the worry spots we have that we're gonna have to see as we continue to tear stuff down and look at how things are is the top of the struts. I didn't see any problems before, because that was essentially the last thing holding the wheel on, but everything seemed to be okay up there for now. So that's essentially the summation of the initial damage stuff, at least what we know is broken. So the next part is we just got to start to take stuff apart start taking stuff off and see how bad it really is. This here is the ball joints that actually ended up failing on us. So this is our inner ball joint on the passenger side, and it actually sheared the pin. So it's not like the ball failed, it just broke the pin straight across. So definitely a heavy impact is what drove that. And this is our outer ball joint that failed the day before, and again it's the same thing where we just sheared that guy straight off, and you can see the ball isn't really even damaged and was still working perfectly fine, you know, apart from the fact that it no longer held the wheel where it needed to be because we just sheared the pin. So that's lots of fun. This is where all of our troubles started for the weekend. The driver just got a little distracted and went out wide, and unfortunately there was a giant curb there. So when he smacked into that curb and it jounced the vehicle, that's when it actually caught the jack point and bent that back and bent the rad, and that's where we think the major impacts took place to the ball joints, which then would later cause them to fail. And this was the first ball joint failure. This is the driver outside that failed and dropped off, and then we lost control of the vehicle and we had to take it in, which we did end up trying to fix that at the track, and we went back out and we tried racing again, where the next day we had the inner ball joint on the passenger side fail, and that's here where this one fails, and now you can see we lose complete control and off into the weeds, and then the recovery just caused more damage, and we just called it quits for the weekend at that point, because we didn't know what else was going to be damaged and all the other things we'd have to fix and repair. So yeah, that's what caused all of this damage that we're now having to fix. So just as we got the front bumper off, started looking, and the headlights have also been broken and their mounts. So I'm thinking that all of this might have shifted and been torqued down, right? All of this probably just got all janked up. So I probably need to get a whole new front crash structure as well. I mean, we'll keep taking this apart and keep going, but I think it's just getting worse as we go. So this is something, a jack point that I had custom made, and this guy's supposed to be straight that way, but it's been pushed in pretty heavy, pretty hefty. Yeah, that's gonna have to be redone. I'm surprised all the welds held though. That's kind of a nice touch, but yeah, that's gonna have to be redone. That'll be fun. Freaking bananaed the bottom front rad, and somehow that held water for the remainder of the weekend for the races. It didn't leak at all, which I just am astounded. Helps it's aluminum, so everything bends easy, but like, we got so lucky just for that, because our weekend could have been done after lap 2 just from that. But that one's trash. She's garbage. So now that we have the rad out and kind of a lot of the stuff off the front here, and looking more closely at this cross member across the top of the car here, I don't think it was bent. I don't see any significant twists on any of the mounting points or any of the connectors here. Everything kind of looks similar side to side. Like, it's not like there's any clearly defined differences, right? And it's pretty loose. I mean, it's supposed to be mounted down here too, right? Which is now loosened. So I just think that maybe when that took its big shunt down there, this might have twisted, flex, because it does have a lot of flex to it because it is aluminum, that it might have flexed more than the plastic could accept, and that's what snapped those mounts for the lights. The lights also are aged and the plastic is brittle and old, right? And it's not the first time there's been a bump of some sort to this side. That could have been something else from racing, another little bump or shunt or another off-track judder or jam that could have broke that. That could have also gone off when the wheel came loose, because this wheel, when it did break, when it broke in the middle down there, the inner ball joint, it came forward and smashed all of this. You can see all of this has been pushed up. So stuff like this I'm gonna have to try and find and replace, right? But that could have come up and that could have kicked the light to break the light here, because this light wasn't broken. This light was. So that could have been the resultant that broke this stuff here. But I think that's a good thing so far, maybe, is that this is still intact, which then means a lot of the other kind of mumbo jumbo that we've done to make our other things fit and work should still work. And with a lot of the other stuff out of the way, you can kind of now see how big that impact was. This was our lower rad support, and that would hold on to the lower rad, and that's supposed to be straight. That is not supposed to be bent like that. Now this was something that we kind of fabricated up on our own. It's not something that you can buy, so we're gonna have to see if we can rebuild that, or if I can just heat it up and bend it back, which I think is the first thing I'm gonna try. But yeah, we're definitely gonna have some fabrication in our future. By no means am I a fabricating expert, but I try my hand. So we're gonna get back at it and continue to tear this thing down. So here's part of that bushing. This is part of where the rear of the A-arm sits into, and when that ball joint failed, it just ramrodded it and shoved it out so far that it actually contacted our exhaust and started to melt, which could have been fun. So that totally roasted that rear lower control arm bushing. So as far as body damage, what we ended up with is this flange here has been kicked forward. You can see here it's kicked forward that way. Should be straight up and down. That's from when the tire came forward. That's probably what cocked the light around and broke our light, so that just again reinforces that our front structure is probably fine. So we'll just have to lightly tap that back down into place. And then we have this fender mount, which should be roughly over here. Got built up, pulled up, twisted up, split, whatever this was. I think it's just a sealant. Bent the metal, so we'll just have to, you know, love tap that back into place. And this flange I think has been pulled forward a little bit, so we'll just have to tap that back down. And then over on this side, I think the only thing, again, we had this tab a little bit out of place, and I think we just pushed this flange a little bit. So I don't think there's anything real detrimental on this side body damage wise, but you can see this flange here has a lot more straight up and down. So that's all we have there. And now we move into taking stuff apart underneath. this is the extent of the damage known so far during the last race weekend. We got our fenders, 2 fenders off. Have to find replacements for those. Our bent rad, I already have a spare for that, so we'll just throw the spare in there, but that's gone, done. The sway bar, I'm gonna have to order a replacement for that. The lower rod mount, I'm gonna have to figure out if I'm gonna make the same type of thing again, if I can fix it or whatnot. The 2 control arms, have replacements for those already, so we're gonna throw those in. Probably order new ball joints and replace ball joints and create that as a new spare set. And then my jack point, obviously, that's also been damaged. So that's essentially all the parts there that have been removed and need to be replaced. And then when we come back around to the front of the vehicle, it's looking a bit more sparse than it did earlier on in the day. And a lot of work has been done. A lot more work needs to be done.